The mahogany conference table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of Meridian Corp's executive boardroom. 23 faces turned toward the projection screen as Elena Voss strode to the front, her crimson heels clicking with practiced authority against the polished marble floor. At 34, she commanded attention effortlessly. Tall, sharp-featured, with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe chignon that emphasized her ice-blue eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena announced, her voice cutting through the morning. Stillness. "Let's discuss our quarterly disasters, shall we?" The presentation remote clicked in her manicured fingers as she advanced through slides highlighting departmental failures. Her gaze swept the room predatorily until it landed on David Chen, seated quietly in the back corner. At 31, he was unremarkable in appearance. Average height, dark hair slightly tousled, wearing a simple navy suit that had seen better years. His dark eyes held a depth that most people never bothered to notice. Speaking of disasters, Elena's voice dripped with manufactured sweetness. "I believe we have our analytics department to thank for some truly spectacular miscalculations this quarter." David's pen stilled against his notepad. Around the table, executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing blood in the water. "Mr. Chen," Elena continued, her smile sharp as broken glass, "would you care to explain why your projections were off by nearly 15%? Or shall I save everyone's time and summarize your department's contributions as consistently disappointing?" The room fell silent. David slowly raised his eyes to meet Elena's challenging stare. For a moment, that stretched. Like eternity, neither spoke. Then, incredibly, David smiled, not the bitter grimace of a cornered man, but something genuine and peaceful. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Voss," he said quietly. "I take full responsibility for any shortcomings in my department's performance." Elena blinked, clearly expecting a defensive response. The easy victory left her momentarily off balance, but she quickly recovered. "How refreshing. Actual accountability," she said, her voice rising for the benefit of their audience. "Though I have to wonder why the company continues to invest in departments that consistently underperform. Perhaps it's time for some restructuring." CEO Harrison Wells cleared his throat from the head of the table. "Elena, I think we can discuss departmental reviews in private." "Oh, but transparency is so important, isn't it?" Elena interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Chen, how many major projects has your team successfully delivered on time and under budget this year?" David's fingers drummed once against his notepad. "I don't have those exact figures memorized, Ms. Voss." "Of course you don't." Elena's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "Because the answer is zero. 0 successful deliveries. Meanwhile, my marketing team has exceeded every target, secured 3 major client acquisitions, and maintained a 96% satisfaction rating." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some executives nodded approvingly at Elena's performance metrics. Others studied their phones, uncomfortable with the public evisceration. David absorbed each verbal blow with the same serene expression. He made a few quiet notes, nodded when appropriate, and never once raised his voice or defended himself. His calm only seemed to fuel Elena's aggression. "I suppose what I'm really asking," Elena concluded, moving to stand directly behind David's chair, "is what exactly justifies your continued employment here? Because from where I'm sitting, you've become quite the expensive liability." The question hung in the air like poison gas. David turned slightly in his chair to look up at Elena, and for just a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes. Not anger or hurt, but a profound sadness that might have been pity. "I serve at the company's pleasure," he said simply. Elena's triumph was complete. She had publicly humiliated him before the entire executive team, and he hadn't even fought back. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, she caught sight of David gathering his papers with the same methodical care he brought to everything. "Weak," she thought with satisfaction. Absolutely weak. If she had looked closer, she might have noticed that David's notepad contained no meeting notes at all, just a single phone number and the words, "Resignation letter, draft 3." The quiet storm was already brewing. 3 days after the meeting, David sat in his cramped office long after the building had emptied. The soft glow of multiple monitors illuminated stacks of files marked confidential and urgent. While Elena celebrated another successful client dinner at the city's most expensive restaurant, David was quietly fixing the catastrophic data breach her team had unknowingly triggered with their flashy new marketing platform. His fingers flew across the keyboard, rebuilding compromised security protocols. This was the third major crisis he'd resolved this month, all traced back to other departments' oversights, yet none would ever know his involvement. The irony wasn't lost on him. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. Lily Park stood in the doorway, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders, still wearing the elegant navy dress from the client presentation. At 28, she was new to Meridian Corp's financial analysis team, but her sharp mind and observant nature had quickly earned respect. "Working late again?" she asked, stepping inside with 2 cups of coffee. "Someone has to," David replied, accepting the cup gratefully. Their fingers brushed, and he noticed the slight tremor in her hand. "I've been watching the server logs," Lily said quietly, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You've been accessing systems across every department, marketing, sales, operations, even executive files." David's expression remained neutral. "Just routine maintenance." "At 3 in the morning? For the past 6 months?" Lily leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "David, what Elena did to you in that meeting was despicable. But I've been digging into the numbers, and something doesn't add up." She pulled out her tablet, swiping through financial reports. "The company's performance metrics show steady improvement across all departments over the past year. But when I drill down into the data sources, they all trace back to algorithm adjustments and strategic recommendations that—" She paused, studying his face. "That originate from your workstation." David set down his coffee and moved to the window. The city sparkled below, unaware that one quiet man in a tower above was holding together a multi-million-dollar corporation through sheer dedication. "You can't prove anything," he said softly. "I don't need to prove it." Lily stood and moved. Beside him, close enough that he could smell her jasmine perfume. "I need to understand why you're letting them destroy you when you're the one keeping this place alive." For the first time in years, David's carefully maintained composure cracked. His shoulders sagged slightly, and when he turned to face her, Lily saw exhaustion etched in every line of his features. "Because the moment I speak up, I become a threat," he whispered. "Elena has powerful allies. CEO Wells values her political connections. The board sees her results, not the foundation they're built on." "So you sacrifice yourself?" "I protect what matters." David's voice grew stronger. "This company employs 800 people. They have families, mortgages, dreams. If Meridian fails because of executive incompetence and political games, those people suffer." Lily stepped closer, drawn by his quiet intensity. "But what about what you need? What you deserve?" Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. David reached out tentatively, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. "I used to think I deserved better," he admitted. "But maybe this is who I'm meant to be, the foundation no one sees." "You're wrong." Lily's voice was fierce with conviction. "You deserve to be celebrated, not hidden. You deserve—" She hesitated, then stepped closer until their bodies were almost touching. "You deserve to be loved for exactly who you are." The moment stretched taut between them. David's hand moved to cup her face fully, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Lily's breath caught. As he leaned closer, "Lily," he whispered, her name a prayer on his lips. Yes, instead of the kiss they both craved, David pulled back, his professional mask sliding into place. You should go home. It's late. The rejection stung, but Lily recognized it for what it was. Protection, not dismissal. She gathered her things, pausing at the door. Elena's marketing presentation next week, the one for the Hartwell account? What about it? The preliminary data models she's using are fundamentally flawed. The client will see right through them. Lily's smile was mysterious, unless, of course, someone happens to correct the algorithms beforehand. After she left, David returned to his screens. His email showed 17 urgent requests from various department heads, all needing solutions to problems they'd created, but couldn't solve. He cracked his knuckles and got back to work. In her penthouse apartment, Elena raised a glass of champagne to her reflection, admiring the diamond necklace her latest conquest had gifted her. Tomorrow, she would continue her systematic destruction of David Chen's reputation, clearing the path for her promotion to VP. She had no idea that her next presentation, the one that would make or break her career, depended entirely on the man she'd publicly humiliated. The foundation was beginning to shift. Lily's investigation into David's hidden contributions became an obsession. She arrived early, stayed late, and spent her weekends tracing digital breadcrumbs through Meridian Corp's labyrinthine systems. What she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about corporate success. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening. Alone in the archive room, surrounded by years of financial records, Lily uncovered the pattern. Every major client acquisition Elena claimed credit for had been preceded by David's risk assessment models. Every successful marketing campaign had utilized his consumer behavior algorithms. Every crisis the company had weathered, from the 2023 supply chain disruption to the recent cybersecurity threats, had been solved by David's quiet interventions. "My God," she whispered, staring at the evidence spread across 3 tables. "He's been running this company from the shadows." Find something interesting? Lily spun around to find David standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. Even exhausted, he carried himself with an understated elegance that made her pulse quicken. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough to see you connecting dots I hoped would stay disconnected." David moved into the room, his presence filling the small space. "Lily, what you're doing, it's dangerous." "For who? You or Elena?" She gestured to the documents. "David, this is incredible. You've single-handedly prevented this company from collapsing a dozen times over. The Hartwell account alone—" "Stop." His voice was sharp enough to cut through her enthusiasm. "You don't understand the politics at play here? Then explain them to me." Lily stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Help me understand why you're willing to let Elena take credit for your brilliance." David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so vulnerable it made Lily's heart ache. "My father built this company alongside Harrison Wells 30 years ago. When Dad died, Harrison promised to take care of me, but that was before Elena arrived with her Ivy League MBA and her senator father's connections. So this is about legacy? It's about survival." David's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Elena has been systematically discrediting anyone she sees as competition. 3 department heads have been forced out in the past 2 years, all replaced by her allies. If I emerge from the shadows now, she'll destroy you. She'll try. And in the process, she'll burn down everything my father built." David moved to the window, watching rain streak the glass. "So I stay invisible, keep the company running, and hope that someday—" "Someday what?" He turned back to her, and the raw longing in his expression made her breath catch. "Someday someone will see me for who I really am, not what I can do for them." The words hung between them like a challenge. Lily set down the files she'd been holding and moved toward him with deliberate slowness. "I see you," she said, her voice soft but certain. I see the way you sacrifice your own recognition to protect 800 families. I see how you solve problems that would destroy other companies without ever asking for thanks. I see your brilliance, your integrity, your... She reached up to touch his face. Your beautiful heart. David's carefully maintained walls crumbled. He pulled her against him, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and hope. Lily melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as months of hidden attraction finally found release. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Lily, he whispered against her forehead. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm choosing. She looked up at him with fierce determination. Elena's presentation to Hartwell Industries is in 3 days. What if we let her fail on her own? What do you mean? A slow smile curved Lily's lips. I mean we stop covering for her. No midnight algorithm fixes. No corrected data. Models. For once, let Elena Voss present work that's actually hers. David stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. She'll crash and burn. Spectacularly. And when the board starts asking questions about how the company has really been operating, Lily traced patterns on his chest through his shirt. Well, the truth has a way of coming to light. That night, for the first time in months, David left the office at a reasonable hour. He walked Lily to her apartment, their hands entwined, talking about everything except the storm they were about to unleash. At her door, she turned to face him. Stay, she whispered, the invitation clear in her eyes. David cupped her face in his hands, studying her features as if memorizing them. Are you sure? Instead of answering, Lily rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring all her admiration and growing love into the gesture. When she pulled back, his resistance had melted away. I'm sure, she breathed against his lips. As they disappeared into her apartment together, neither noticed Elena's black Mercedes pulling away from the curb across the street. She'd followed Lily from the office, suspicious of her late nights and her interest in David. What she'd seen gave her a new weapon, and she had every intention of using it. The Hartwell Industries presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp in Meridian Corp's premier conference room. Elena had spent 3 days perfecting her slides, confident that her marketing genius would secure the $20 million account that would guarantee her promotion to vice president. She strode into the boardroom at 9:45, resplendent in a tailored Armani suit, her presentation materials organized with military precision. CEO Harrison Wells sat at the head of the table alongside the board of directors, while James Hartwell and his executive team occupied the opposite side. David slipped in quietly and took his usual seat in the back corner, notepad in hand. Lily entered moments later, choosing a seat where she could observe both Elena and the clients' faces clearly. Gentlemen, Elena began, her voice projecting confidence as she activated the projection system. Prepare to be amazed by a marketing strategy that will revolutionize your brand presence. The first slide appeared, Hartwell Industries, capturing the millennial market. Elena launched into her presentation with practiced flair, outlining demographic analysis, consumer behavior patterns, and projected revenue increases. For the first 10 minutes, everything proceeded smoothly. Elena's delivery was flawless, her graphics polished, her enthusiasm infectious. Harrison Wells nodded approvingly while board members took notes. Then James Hartwell raised his hand. Excuse me, Ms. Voss, but these demographic figures, they don't align with our internal research. You're showing millennial purchasing power at 42% of the target market, but our data indicates it's closer to 31%. Elena's smile never wavered. Mr. Hartwell, I assure you our research methodology is quite sophisticated. Perhaps your internal team is working with outdated information? Hartwell's CFO leaned forward. Our data is from last quarter. These projections you're showing, they appear to be based on pre-pandemic consumer behavior patterns. A murmur rippled through the room. Elena's confidence flickered for just a moment before she pressed forward. Let me show you our ROI projections, which I think will address your concerns. The next slide revealed a graph showing exponential growth curves that made several board members raise their eyebrows. Elena launched into an explanation of conversion rates and customer lifetime value, but her words were met with increasingly skeptical faces. Ms. Voss, Hartwell's marketing director interrupted, these conversion rates, you're showing 12% for social media campaigns. Industry standard is typically between 2 and 4%. Are you certain these figures are accurate? Elena's composure began to crack. For months, she'd relied on mysteriously corrected data that had made her presentations shine. Now, presenting truly original work, the flaws were glaringly obvious. Our advanced algorithms have identified optimization opportunities that, she stammered, clicking rapidly through slides that showed increasingly implausible projections. Algorithms? Hartwell himself spoke up, his tone politely curious. What kind of algorithms? Elena's pause stretched too long. Proprietary, predictive models that factor in various market dynamics. From the back of the room, Harrison Wells cleared his throat. Elena, perhaps you could walk us through the methodology behind these algorithms. The technical details are quite complex. Elena's voice had lost all its earlier authority. Try us, Wells said, his tone cooling noticeably. Elena looked desperately around the room, her gaze landing briefly on David. For a moment, her eyes pleaded with him to rescue her as he had so many times before. David met her gaze steadily and did absolutely nothing. I'm afraid the presentation materials focus on strategic outcomes rather than technical implementation, Elena finally managed, but the damage was done. Hartwell leaned back in his chair. Ms. Voss, I have to say, I'm concerned about the fundamental assumptions underlying this proposal. The market analysis appears to be based on outdated data. The conversion projections are unrealistic, and when we ask about methodology, you can't provide specifics. Elena's face flushed crimson. Around the table, board members shifted uncomfortably while Hartwell's team exchanged meaningful glances. Perhaps, Harrison Wells interjected smoothly, we should postpone this presentation until our team can provide more comprehensive supporting documentation. No! Elena's voice cracked like a whip. I mean, that won't be necessary. Mr. Chen, perhaps you could provide the technical details regarding our algorithmic approaches? All eyes turned to David. He looked up from his notepad with mild surprise, as if he'd been lost in thought. I'm sorry, Ms. Voss, but I wasn't involved in developing the algorithms for your presentation. I wouldn't want to misspeak about methodologies I'm unfamiliar with. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Elena stared at him in disbelief, finally understanding that her safety net had been removed. But you always, she started, then stopped herself before admitting her dependence on David's hidden contributions. James Hartwell stood up. I think we've heard enough. Mr. Wells, we'll need to reconsider whether Meridian Corp is the right partner for this project. We require vendors who can demonstrate genuine expertise and provide transparent methodologies. As the Hartwell team filed out, Elena remained frozen at the front of the room, her career crumbling around her like a house of cards. The board members dispersed with whispered conversations and disapproving looks. Harrison Wells approached David as the room emptied. Mr. Chen, could you stay behind for a moment? When only David, Wells, and Lily remained, the CEO closed the door carefully. David, Wells said quietly, I think it's time you and I had a very long conversation about how this company really operates. David looked up at the man who had been his father's partner, his expression calm but resolute. I think you're right, Harrison. It's time for the truth. 6 months later, the nameplate on the corner office read David Chen, Chief Strategy Officer. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, he watched the city come alive with morning light, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands, and a quiet smile on his face. The transformation at Meridian Corp had been swift once Harrison Wells learned the truth. A forensic audit revealed the extent of David's hidden contributions. Algorithms that had generated over $60 million in additional revenue, crisis management that had prevented catastrophic losses, and strategic insights that had positioned the company ahead of every major market shift. Elena's downfall had been equally dramatic. Stripped of her artificial success metrics, her true performance record revealed missed opportunities, alienated clients, and a toxic management style that had cost the company several talented employees. She'd been quietly transferred to a regional office in Cleveland, a lateral move that everyone understood was actually a demotion disguised as face-saving. A soft knock interrupted David's thoughts. Lily entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and the morning reports, her engagement ring catching the sunlight as she moved. "The Shanghai expansion numbers are in," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Your market entry strategy exceeded projections by 18%. Our strategy," David corrected, pulling her hand to his lips to kiss her ring finger. "I couldn't have done this without your courage to push me into the light." Lily smiled, remembering that rainy night in the archive room when she'd first uncovered his secret. "You were never meant to stay in the shadows, David. You were meant to lead." A year had passed since their first kiss in that document-filled room, and their relationship had deepened into something neither had expected to find in the corporate world. They'd learned to balance their professional partnership with their personal connection, supporting each other through the challenges of David's rapid ascension and Lily's promotion to senior financial analyst. "Speaking of leading," Lily continued with a mischievous glint in her eye, "Harrison wants to discuss the succession plan. Word is he's considering early retirement." David raised an eyebrow. "CEO at 32? That seems ambitious, even for me. The board loves you. The employees respect you. And after the Hartwell Industries account became our biggest success story," Lily shrugged. "Sometimes quiet strength makes the loudest impression." The Hartwell presentation, redone properly with David's authentic analysis and strategic insights, had not only secured the $20 million contract, but had led to 3 additional partnerships worth over $40 million combined. James Hartwell himself had specifically requested to work directly with David on future projects. "There's something poetic about it," Lily mused, moving to stand behind David's chair and wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "Elena spent so much energy trying to destroy you, and in the end, her attack was what revealed your true value to everyone." David leaned back against her, feeling the solid warmth of her presence. "My father used to say that integrity was like a foundation, invisible, until everything else falls down. Then it's the only thing left standing." "Wise man. I wish I could have met him." "He would have adored you," David said, turning in his chair to face her properly. "He always believed the right person would see past my quiet exterior to find something worth fighting for." Lily cupped his face in her hands, studying the features she'd grown to love. The thoughtful dark eyes, the gentle smile, the strength that didn't need to announce itself. "Your father was right," she whispered, leaning down to kiss him softly. "You're worth everything." Their wedding 3 months later was a small, elegant affair held in the botanical gardens where they'd had their first official date. Harrison Wells walked Lily down the aisle in place of her father, who couldn't travel from Korea, while David's best man was Tom Bradley, the facilities manager whose job David had quietly saved during the last round of budget cuts. Elena received an invitation, though no one expected her to attend. She didn't. As David and Lily exchanged vows surrounded by colleagues who had become family, neither mentioned the quiet man who had once been overlooked in the back corner of conference rooms. That version of David had served his purpose, protecting, what mattered until the time came to step into the light. The reception was held at Meridian Corp's executive dining room, transformed with flowers and candlelight. During their first dance to At Last by Etta James, David whispered in Lily's ear, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting yourself be seen," she whispered back. Later, as they drove away toward their honeymoon in Tuscany, David's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, then decided to check. It was from Elena. "Congratulations, you earned it." David showed the message to Lily, who considered it thoughtfully. "Think she means it?" "Does it matter?" David replied, deleting the message without responding. "Some people need to tear others down to feel strong, but real strength—" He reached over to take his wife's hand. "Real strength lifts others up." As their plane lifted off into the sunset, David reflected on the journey from that humiliating conference room confrontation to this moment of quiet triumph. He'd learned that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from fighting back, but from staying true to yourself until others recognize the truth. Elena had tried to crush his spirit with public mockery, but in the end, his quiet dignity had spoken, louder than her cruel words. She had shouted her superiority from the rooftops, while he had simply continued being excellent in the shadows. In the end, authenticity had won over artifice, substance over style, and love over ambition. The quiet man had found his voice, and it was powerful enough to change everything.